Any problem with my girl?
This isn't your fight to get involved in.
She's my girl. It's my fight. That's what you want. Hey!
Let's get out of here right now. We don't have any time to waste. We really need to move fast. Come on, hurry up, let's go.
The story begins with Remo, an impulsive and talented young man who grew up in the toughest neighborhoods of Los Angeles. His mother, Cheryl, trapped in illegal substances, is emotionally absent, so Remo has had to take care not only of himself, but also of his younger sister. With no real opportunities and surrounded by mafia violence, Remo looks for a way to move forward while fighting to protect his family. He has a natural talent for martial arts and combat, but his life is marked by poverty, frustration, and bad decisions. After finishing his nightly routine, he heads to a convenience store. While talking to the clerk, he sees a poster for a fighting tournament that catches his attention, but in the end, he decides to ignore it since he will soon attend a job interview. Returning home, he talks to the babysitter and tells her he couldn't get the money, promising to add the debt to his next payment. He then heads to his mother's room and finds her lying in bed. On the table, there's an almost empty liquor bottle, a pack of cigarettes, and several pills, which he decides to dump into the sink. On the other hand, we meet Greck, a professional fighter who until recently held an undefeated streak. However, the day before, he lost his first fight against a newcomer, which unleashed criticism in all the media. His coach, Ozzy, a childhood friend of his father, reminds him that the bets were completely in his favor and that an easy win was expected, but he ended up losing in humiliating fashion. The newspapers speak of a possible retirement. Greck, in an arrogant tone, responds that this is exactly what his enemies would want. After all, he has only lost one fight in his entire career. Ozzy points out that he's been distracted lately and needs to focus on the next training session, but Greck interrupts, saying he'll skip training today as he has a trip planned with his girlfriend to Las Vegas. As he's about to leave the gym, Greck runs into his sister, Yessie, who stops him to give him important news. Their father will be released from prison that same night. She thought they would both go to pick him up, but Greck makes it clear he doesn't care. The only thing that matters to him is his Vegas vacation with his girlfriend. He will be gone all week and return next Sunday, leaving no doubt he won't get involved in anything related to his father. Later, we see James leaving prison with a hardened look. Waiting at the entrance are Yessie and Ozzy. His daughter runs to hug him tightly, while the coach shakes his hand. James asks about his brother, and Yessie, a bit uncomfortable, tries to soften the answer, saying he had an inconvenience and couldn't come, but that he sent his regards. Midway through the trip, they decide to stop at a store to buy a couple of beers, unaware they are about to face trouble. Suddenly, two members of the Russian mafia appear, recognize James, and approach with unfriendly intentions. It turns out James has an outstanding debt with them. Seeing Yessie, one of the mobsters gives her a lustful look and comments on how pretty she is, hinting she could pay what her father owes. At that moment, Remo enters the store, notices the tension in the air, and without thinking, decides to intervene, pretending to be Yasmin's boyfriend. One of the mobsters, named Anatoly, the more aggressive of the two, flashes his gun in an attempt to intimidate him, warning he'd better leave right now. Remo reacts quickly, disarming the mobster in a single move, knocking him down and breaking his hand with a direct blow, while neutralizing the second thug in seconds. The clerk reloads his shotgun and orders everyone to get out. As the others leave, the coach notices something on the floor, a military dog tag dropped near where Remo fought. He picks it up and slips it into his pocket, intrigued to learn more about the young man who fought the mobsters. Back at the gym, Ozzy confronts his friend, demanding an explanation for what happened. James admits he had no choice. He was about to lose everything and was forced to borrow from the mafia. He couldn't let the gym disappear, as he always saw it as the legacy that would secure his children's future. Ozzy reminds him he ended up in prison and that his kids needed him while he was gone. It was Ozzy who kept the gym running all those years, and he can't understand why James chose to get in debt with criminals instead of asking him for help. He would have agreed without hesitation. James lowers his gaze and sincerely thanks him for everything he's done, admitting he owes him more than he could ever repay, and that he never wanted to be a burden to anyone. The next morning, still intrigued by the young man who intervened at the store, Ozzy decides to search for the name engraved on the dog tag. It doesn't take him long to find the hotel where he's staying, so he shows up in person and hands it back to him. Somewhat surprised, Remo accepts it without saying much. Ozzy tells him he was impressed by his moves. You don't usually see that kind of reaction in high-pressure situations. He explains that he's the coach at the Esterling family gym and genuinely believes Remo has great potential for fighting. He's surprised no one has signed him yet. Remo replies that he grew up in a military family, something that shaped his character from a young age. He once had opportunities, but due to travel and personal circumstances, he ended up wasting them. Ozzy insists that he would like to train him, but Remo refuses, saying he has a job interview tomorrow. Hoping to change his mind, Ozzy offers something more practical. He needs someone to keep the gym clean, will pay $15 an hour, and also let him train for free. He hands him a card with the address and, before leaving, firmly tells him not to let his talent go to waste. After dropping his sister off at school, Remo is intercepted by the same mobsters from the store incident. They hold him at gunpoint and force him into a van, taking him to a secluded location, an abandoned structure that serves as a venue for underground fights. There, the head of the organization tells him the man whose hand he broke wasn't just any thug. He was their best fighter. For that reason, Remo will now have to replace him in the underground circuit. If he refuses, his family will pay the price. They threaten to sell his sister to the highest bidder. The mobster makes it clear they know his entire history, even that his father was a war hero who died on the streets of Iraq. Desperate, Remo begs them not to hurt his family, insisting the problem is between them, but the mobster coldly cuts him off. That is impossible. Anatoly was not only a valuable fighter, he was family. He must get ready for the first test. His first fight starts right now. As the match begins, our protagonist seems disoriented. His opponent lands precise and powerful strikes, hitting his face several times. The crowd starts mocking him and his opponent relaxes, convinced he's facing an inexperienced rookie, but that overconfidence comes at a price. At that moment, Remo rises with determination, dodges the next punch, and takes advantage of the opening. In a quick move, he executes a takedown that slams his opponent violently to the ground. Without giving him time to recover, Remo mounts him and delivers a series of accurate blows. Alarmed by the intensity of the assault, the referees step in immediately to stop the fight. The mafia boss approaches and says he's surprised. It seems what happened at the store wasn't just a lucky hit. Thinking it's over, Remo points out they're even now, to which Yuri replies they're just getting started. He will have to face all the remaining fights. If he wins, they'll leave his family alone. But if he loses, Anatoly will cut off his hands as punishment. He must prepare for the next fight. His men will make sure to find him. 2 days later, Remo shows up at the gym to accept the janitor job. Ozzy tells him he will be in charge of cleaning all the rooms, as well as washing and folding towels, and his student Dante will shadow him during training sessions. Meanwhile, we see the mafia boss talking to James. His patience is running out. His associates are furious. They don't like liars. He will give him 1 week to pay his debt. Otherwise, he'll be forced to collect it his own way. The next day, Remo crosses paths with Greck, the boxing champion. Seeing him, he can't help but get excited. He's admired him from afar his whole life and now has him right in front of him. But the excitement quickly fades when the boxer responds coldly, saying the gym belongs to him because it was founded by his father, and that makes it his. Remo reaches out to shake his hand, but instead of returning the gesture, Greck throws him his sweaty towel and puts on his headphones without saying a word, walking away with the same arrogance he projects in the ring. While the coach suggests a new strategy for his future fights, Greck notices his sister exchanging looks with the new employee, something that infuriates him. He treats him with disdain and tells him never to look at his sister again. Ozzy orders him to shut up and get back to training right now. After leaving the shower, Greck throws his wet towel on the floor, staring at him with contempt, expecting the janitor to pick it up. His teammate, laughing at the situation, imitates the gesture to join in the mockery. With absolute arrogance, Greck removes the towel covering his private parts and throws it on the floor as well, implying that Remo should pick it up. Before Remo reacts, his shadow partner decides to step in, picks up the towel, and tells them both to get dressed and leave. The next morning, while training, the champion again sees his sister exchanging looks with the janitor. Angry, he stops his routine and yells at him to stop looking at her. Unlike before, our protagonist decides to respond bluntly, saying he must be jealous since his sister pays more attention to him. He adds with an ironic tone that he thought the towel incident was an accident, but now he's starting to think it was an invitation. Completely enraged, the boxer tries to attack him, but his shadow partner steps in to stop him. In the struggle to break free, Greck ends up injuring his partner's knee. Seeing this, Remo decides to step into the ring to face him. Yessi notices the situation and Ozzy quickly moves in to stop them, separating them firmly and making it clear that if they want to fight, it will be under gym rules. Since his shadow partner is injured, Remo will be his replacement. The fight starts immediately. The champion, confident at first, is surprised by Remo's reflexes, technique, and strength. When the tension reaches its peak, Ozzy yells for them to stop. Training will continue tomorrow. After the day ends, Ozzy tells him it's been months since he's seen Greck fight with so much enthusiasm, and that deep down, he thinks the jealousy he feels seeing him near Yessi is pushing him to improve. However, he adds that Remo should also use every training session to polish his technique. Although Greck is a professional, he is convinced Remo is at the same level, even without having done this professionally. If he keeps training with discipline, he has no doubt he will soon surpass him. When Ozzy leaves, the mobsters intercept him and force him into a vehicle, taking him straight to the underground fight venue. In this second fight, his opponent is bigger and more aggressive, but Remo doesn't back down. After several intense exchanges, our protagonist waits for the right moment and lands a straight right to the face that knocks his opponent out cold. The crowd goes wild. From the shadows, Yuri watches silently, approaches, and congratulates him on the victory. There's no doubt he was born for this. The next morning, Remo arrives at the gym wearing a beanie to cover the bruises on his face. He steps into the ring and tries to train as if nothing happened, but the toll from last night's fight catches up with him. He tires quickly and his movements are slower than usual. Ozzy watches closely, stops the training, and asks to speak privately in his office. He tells him he seems tired and disconnected, as if stressed. Instead of pushing him, he tells him he'll leave early today to rest, but warns that tomorrow he wants him at 100%. Leaving the gym, Remo sees Yessi carrying bags of fertilizer and immediately goes to help her. Grateful, she invites him into her greenhouse, telling him she originally built it for a thesis project, but now she's thinking of making it a career. Noticing the cuts on his hands, she asks him to sit down, cuts an aloe leaf, and carefully applies the gel to his wounds. As she does, she confesses she loves the gym, but sometimes she needs to get away from it all, see her plants, breathe calmly. To her, that place is like a sanctuary. In the following scenes, we see Remo and Yessi spending more and more time together. They walk, laugh, and support each other in tough moments. In one of those moments, Remo invites her to his apartment to meet his family. Yessi gives him some of her plants, and our protagonist starts making natural smoothies for his mother, hoping to help her overcome her addiction. As the atmosphere changes, Remo begins to regain a long-lost feeling, hope that things can get better. Meanwhile, the boxer continues to harass Remo, treating him with disdain just for being the new janitor at the gym. The constant humiliation begins to wear on several of his teammates, who finally decide to step in, among them his teammate Chad, who firmly tells him to stop bothering Remo, that he seems obsessed, and that it's time for him to stop being such a jerk. That night, just as Remo was getting ready for his date with Yessi, the Russian mobsters intercepted him and forced him into the van. While they drove him to the underground fight venue, Remo tried to send Yessi a message to cancel the date, but Anatoly snatched the phone, read the message, and was surprised to see he had a relationship with James's daughter. Upon arrival, Remo tried to convince the mobster to postpone the fight, explaining he had an important commitment, but he coldly interrupted, saying he didn't care what he had to do or who he had stood up. Then they dragged him to the combat area, where the crowd was waiting impatiently. The opponent was more aggressive than the previous ones, throwing fast and precise punches, forcing Remo to stay on the defensive. However, after dodging a hook, Remo took advantage of an opening and landed a powerful knee strike straight to the face, knocking his opponent down instantly. The place erupted in shouts as the mobster watched in silence, paying closer attention to Remo's skills. The next morning, Remo arrived at the gym wearing a beanie and sunglasses to hide his fight injuries. However, Ozzy asked him to take them off. Seeing his battered face, he demanded an explanation. Without mentioning the mafia's threats, Remo said he had participated in an underground fight. Surprised and upset, Ozzy told him Greck had a very important fight coming up and that because of him he had skipped today's session. He was putting the gym's reputation at risk. Feeling betrayed, the coach fired him on the spot and ordered him to pack his things. Before leaving, our protagonist decided to visit his girlfriend's greenhouse, left her a letter with some flowers, and walked away. Finding the flowers and the letter, without wasting time, she went to the gym and asked Ozzy for an explanation. The coach told her what happened, that he saw Remo with bruises, and he admitted to having fought in an underground club. He said he had no choice, and although it hurt, he could not allow someone like that to represent the gym. He would not let his trainees get involved in those kinds of fights. A few hours later, James arrived at the gym with a smile and approached Ozzy. He told him he was planning a party to celebrate his birthday as a way to thank him for everything he had done for him. It was the least he could do. He wanted everyone from the gym to be there on Friday night, a simple but special celebration to gather those who had been part of the journey. When the day of the party arrived, James spoke in front of everyone and dedicated a few words to Ozzy, thanking him for his unconditional support and for not abandoning the gym even in the most difficult times. A couple of minutes later, Yessi approached her brother and told him she would return to the gym for a moment. She had forgotten Ozzy's gift in her locker. The atmosphere remained lively until James, noticing his daughter was taking too long to return, began to get nervous. He went to Greck and asked if he knew anything, to which he replied that she went to the gym to get the gift. Hearing this, James became too agitated. He grabbed Ozzy's phone and tried to call her, but she had left her phone in the vehicle. Without wasting time, he called Remo and told him to go to the gym immediately. The Russians planned to burn it down and his daughter was inside. Remo arrived at the gym just in time to see the mobsters driving away in their van. Before he could react, a huge explosion shook the entire perimeter, sending up a cloud of fire and debris. Without thinking, he ran inside through flames and smoke, finding Yessi unconscious on the floor. At that moment, Greck appeared staggering through the smoke and yelled at him to get his sister out immediately. He would stay and try to contain the fire. Remo carried Yessi out alive. Minutes passed, and he decided to go back in, finding Greck unconscious. He carried him out just in time. In the distance, we saw James watching everything, his face broken by guilt. Once at the hospital, Ozzy told Remo that the doctors said Yessi would remain hospitalized for several days because the smoke had severely damaged her lungs. Greck, for his part, was out of danger but would not be able to fight for a while. Feeling guilty, Remo apologized and explained that the man whose arm he had broken was a mafia fighter. They had investigated him and forced him to fight under threats to his family. With no choice, he ended up caught up in all this, never imagining they would go so far as to burn down the gym. Ozzy told him it had nothing to do with him. James was the real culprit. Apparently, he owed a lot of money to the Russians. He thought that by burning the gym, he would collect the insurance money and use it to pay his debt. He asked him to come with him and took him to his vehicle, where he showed him James locked in the trunk. James tried to justify himself, saying he had no choice, that Yuri had threatened to kill his family, but Ozzy, outraged, told him he had crossed a line he should never have touched. Without another word, He knocked him out with a single punch, and together they went to confront the mafia boss. Upon arrival, Remo reminded Yuri they had a deal, to which Yuri replied he was a man of his word and the debt was settled. However, he clarified that James was a separate matter. When James was in prison, his men had protected him. If he wasn't killing him now, it was because he saw him as an investment. He had owed him money since before being arrested, and instead of finding him when he finished his sentence, he gambled away everything he had. The only thing of value left was the insurance policy. Ozzy intervened, pointing out it was worth over $750,000, much more than James owed. Yuri said he was right, but he would take it as interest for the delay. As he said before, his investment had paid off, but if he didn't get the payment, James and his family would suffer the consequences. At that moment, Remo looked directly at Yuri and made a risky proposal. He would fight his best man, but if he won, he wanted all outstanding debts erased, including James's. He argued that a fight of that caliber would draw everyone's attention and move a fortune in bets. Yuri considered it carefully, but the chance to multiply his money convinced him. He nodded with a smile and said he agreed. After all, he had nothing to lose. On the day of the fight, both fighters positioned themselves in the center of the combat area. Monstrovia, the mafia's star fighter, takes off his shirt, revealing his imposing physique, a true mountain of muscle. Our protagonist takes the first step with determination, throws several punches to the abdomen, and lands a right straight to the face, but his opponent does not even flinch. Monstrovia dodges the next attacks with ease, and with a single blow sends Remo to the ground. Then he grabs him by the shirt and begins hitting him repeatedly. Despite the punishment, Remo gets back into the fight, determined not to give up, manages to land a couple of strong punches that stagger his opponent. But once again, he is taken down with ease. With his face covered in blood, Remo gets back up and launches a flurry of punches with everything he has left, slowly weakening the giant. Seeing his best fighter about to be defeated, Yuri stands up, visibly angry. In a last effort, our protagonist lands a direct kick to the face that knocks his opponent down, ending the fight with his shoulder dislocated. Yuri approaches and looks at him for a few seconds, assures him he will keep his word, acknowledges that although he defeated his best man, he also made him a fortune, points to his partners and adds with a sarcastic smile that they all bet against him, thinking it would be easy money, but they got a big surprise. Speaking with James, Ozzy makes things clear, asks him to stay out of their lives for good. If he comes near or tries to contact his children, he will call Remo to take care of him without hesitation. Without another word, they turn around and leave, leaving James to the thugs, who put him in the truck. Worried, Remo asks the coach about James, to which he replies they will not harm him, they will send him to a rehab program. Despite everything bad, he would never dare hurt him. He is still his best friend, but also makes it clear he will not allow his bad decisions to keep dragging Jesse and Greck down. The next morning, while Remo is in the living room with Jesse, Greck appears and thanks him for saving them both, tells him Ozzy explained everything that happened with the mafia and apologizes for the humiliations. Remo accepts his apology without problem. Greck confesses his sister is a good person, but their father always got them into trouble. He also tells him he has dedicated his whole life to fighting, but due to the injuries suffered in the fire, his career is over. Remo tells him he has an idea to help him. He plans to replace him in his next fight. Later, we see Remo undergoing intense and constant training, while visiting Jesse at the hospital every day to support and accompany her. Over time, the gym is repaired and attendance slowly recovers. For his part, our protagonist dedicates long days to training, following a strict diet to improve his performance. One day, his mother, moved, thanks him for everything he has done for them, acknowledging that he sacrificed his life to care for his sister during the most difficult moments. She admits that before she used her father's death as an excuse to avoid responsibilities, but now she sees everything clearly. She also points out that Jesse is an incredible woman, definitely deserving a man like him. At nightfall, One of the representatives of a renowned fighters agency arrives at the gym to speak seriously with Ozzy. In the middle of the conversation, he tunes into the radio and makes him listen to what the sports news are saying. They harshly criticize the recent decisions of the Esterling family gym, mentioning that its reputation is plummeting, that Greck was humiliated by a new unknown fighter, and that now, in an apparent desperate attempt, they have decided to replace the champion with someone with no record or name in the professional circuit. The agent makes it clear there are many doubts about the gym's future, and that everyone is watching what happens in the next fight, warns him that his new fighter is obligated to win, otherwise all sponsorships will withdraw from the program. He would not want his legacy to end in such a humiliating way. On the awaited day, before starting the fight, Jessie gives him a kiss to cheer him up, wishes him luck, and tells him that no matter what happens, she is proud of him. Remo, focused but moved by Jessie's gesture, heads to the combat zone. The crowd begins to cheer. Among the attendees are his gym companions. The announcer introduces the fight, and the atmosphere becomes tense as soon as the bell rings. Remo makes his first attack, but his opponent dodges without difficulty. They exchange several blows, circling around the ring, measuring each movement, until a mistake leaves Remo on the ground. At the end of the first round, Remo returns to his corner. The coach approaches and speaks firmly. His rival is arrogant and overconfident. That excess of security is exactly what he must take advantage of to gain the upper hand. In seconds, the fight resumes, and Remo, determined to change the course of the match, attacks his opponent with a burst of unpredictable punches. In this second round, his rival fails to react as quickly. Remo surpasses him in agility and precision, completely dominating while the crowd begins to cheer with excitement at the unexpected turn. Ozzy approaches and tells him he sees fear in his opponent, that he is clearly intimidated, advises him to maintain intensity and not lower his guard for a second. Looking at Remo with admiration, Greck confesses he has never seen anyone fight with such passion and dedication, tells him he cannot give up now, that he must keep going and win for the family. Motivated by his words, our protagonist starts the third round with unshakable determination, attacks with all his strength, dodges his opponent's attempts, and takes him down with agile and unpredictable moves. But just as he tries to land a kick, Donan surprises him with a direct punch to the jaw. He corners him against the cage and begins punishing him with a strong flurry, but Remo, refusing to fall, gets back up at the most unexpected moment. With a furious yell, he regains the advantage, uses the cage as leverage, and takes his opponent down with a punch. With him on the ground, he applies a submission until he finally manages to defeat his opponent, proclaiming himself the new champion. His teammates and family erupt in shouts of excitement and joy, celebrating the victory enthusiastically. For his part, Ozzy approaches with a proud smile and raises his hand, congratulating him on his great victory and for showing what it means to fight with heart. A few days later, we see our protagonist surprising his girlfriend with a very special gift, a personalized frame to display her medical scholarship. With both kissing as they talk about the future, we end the movie.